This is East Asia Tonight.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Jill Newbronner, and here are tonight's top stories from East Asia. Economic ties in the focus of the meeting between Japanese leader Shigeru Ishiba and US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent as the Prime Minister pushes for continued trade talks. Pressure also on Mr. Ishiba and his ruling coalition, facing the possibility of losing its majority in Sunday's upper house election. All this amid further evidence Japan's rice crisis is easing, with inflation cooling last month from a 29-month high. Plus, China accuses foreign spy agencies of trying to steal its rare earths, pledging to crack down on espionage it says is aimed at its critical minerals sector. University students in Hong Kong are using AI to create a digital human and learn the secrets of a porcelain paint master. Our correspondent takes a look at how the city's traditional arts are getting a touch of AI. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba has just met US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in Tokyo, with all eyes on whether and how the high-stakes talks could work out a trade deal before the looming tariff deadline on the 1st of August. Japanese media say the two men met at the Prime Minister's official residence, and Mr. Ishiba had asked the US Treasury Secretary to, quote, continue tariff talks actively. Mr. Bessent is headed to the World Expo in Osaka this weekend. Now, the meeting comes as Tokyo's top trade negotiator, Ryose Akazawa, is pushing to break an impasse with Washington. Yesterday's phone call with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick saw both sides agreeing to continue dialogue over the tariff issue. And that's after President Trump stressed that the 25% tariff on Japanese imports will likely stay in place. Tokyo is facing calls by Washington to open up its domestic market for rice and other agricultural goods as a prerequisite to further talks. Japan is also pushing for the complete withdrawal of auto tariffs, but the US has refused to make concessions on that front. The Japanese Prime Minister is also under pressure on the home front. Voters are heading to the polls this weekend in an election that's seen as a key test for Mr. Ishiba. His ruling Liberal Democratic Party, or LDP, in a poll this week, scored its lowest rating since 2012. And at least two other surveys say the coalition is expected to lose its upper house majority. So what's at stake? The election on Sunday will decide the future of Mr. Ishiba's administration. His government is struggling after losing its majority in last year's vote for the powerful lower house. Analysts say that loss was the result of voters punishing Mr. Ishiba's party over a fundraising scandal. If the LDP loses a majority in the upper house as well, chances are it will likely continue running the country, but it will find it harder to take difficult long-term decisions. A bad result could also force Mr. Ishiba to step down. So could this be the time for the opposition to rise up? Observers are not so confident. They say the groups are too fractured to be seen by voters as a viable alternative. But a majority loss in the upper house by the LDP could still help the opposition push policies that would otherwise be blocked by the ruling party. With a tough challenge ahead, Prime Minister Ishiba has set what he called a must-attain goal of winning a simple majority. 125 seats are up for election, and that's about half the total seats in the upper house. LDP and its coalition partner, Komeito, will need to win 50 seats in total, and that will add to the 75 seats they already have that are not contested this time. Well, topping voters' concerns now are soaring prices and stagnant wages. The price of rice in Japan is nearly double what it was a year ago, forcing Tokyo to make an unprecedented move to release rice stockpiles. And that's brought prices down, but voter discontent remains high. To ease the pain, Ishiba's government has promised a handout of 20,000 yen per person. That's around $135. At the same time, Japan is under pressure from the US to spend more on defense, and it's reeling from President Donald Trump's punishing tariff threats, as we've been speaking about. CNN's Michio Ishida joins us live from Tokyo with more on this. Michio, we've got 2 more days until the upper house elections. Where do parties stand now, and who's gaining ground?
Well, Jill, as you've indicated, all eyes are on whether ruling coalition can maintain a majority in the upper house, as the ruling Liberal Democratic Party and Komeito together do not have a majority in the lower house. And to maintain the coalition, they need 50 seats. But the latest survey released by Fuji News Network suggests they will win less than 40 seats. And it doesn't mean the biggest opposition party, Constitutional Democrats, will win many seats. They are likely to win, but modestly, as seats are expected to be dispersed among opposition parties. Now, media surveys suggest Democratic Party for the People may win 15 or more seats. DPP is a party of moderate conservatives and liberals formed in 2020, and it's been gaining public support since last October's general election by pressuring the Ishiba government to expand the scope of non-taxable income. Then there's another party formed in 2020 called Sansei-to. Analysts call it a right-wing populist party. Now, Sansei-to is predicted to gain about 15 seats from a total 2 it's had in the entire upper house. Now, votes are held by right-wing LDP. Supporters are predicted to be cast to this party, Sansei-to.
Yeah, and as we were talking about Mr. Ishiba's LDP as well as its partner, Komeito, they're forecast to lose their majority, possibly. Now, if that scenario was to become reality, what options then does Mr. Ishiba have?
Well, analysts here say if his ruling coalition fails to retain a majority in the upper house, Mr. Ishiba will be under pressure to step down. And if he agrees to step down, the LDP will have to hold a presidential election. And some political watchers think incumbent Agriculture Minister Shinjiro Koizumi, who pushed out reserved rice at a time Japan's facing rice shortages, has a chance to win. But there is no assurance he will be elected prime minister because the ruling coalition would not have a majority in both houses of parliament if Mr. Ishiba has to resign. But really, we have to just wait for election results before speculating too much.
Absolutely. With the clock fast running down to that tariff deadline in a couple of weeks, how will the election outcome affect the trade talks that are still ongoing with the US or the continuity of any trade deal that may be struck?
Well, ironically, at this politically crucial time, as you mentioned earlier, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is in Japan. And Mr. Bessent is here to celebrate US National Day at the World Exposition in Osaka on Saturday. And Mr. Bessent paid a courtesy call to Mr. Ishiba. And Mr. Ishiba said after the meeting, he talked to media that they've discussed security, defense, and tariffs. And he said he told Mr. Bessent he aims to reach a mutually beneficial agreement, and Mr. Bessent expressed hope of a good agreement. But the reality so far is U.S. tariffs are hurting Japan's most important auto sector. The U.S. slapped 25% tariffs from April, and in May, car export to the U.S. fell by 24.7% from a year ago, and 26.7% in June. And if reciprocal tariffs on other Japanese goods go into effect from August the 1st, Nomura Research Institute calculates it could contract Japan's GDP by 0.85%. And regardless of election results, we are hearing that Economic Revitalization Minister Ryosei Akazawa is preparing to head to the U.S. next week to meet Trade Secretary Howard Lutnick.
All right, thank you for keeping an eye on all those moving parts. CNA's Michio Ishida live to us from Tokyo. Now, China's Ministry of State Security says foreign spy agencies had tried to steal rare earths and pledged to crack down on this infiltration and espionage. The ministry said in a WeChat post today that foreign agents tried to, quote, collude with and incite domestic lawbreakers to steal the items through delivery channels. The post did not name the country, but said it had tried to bypass export restrictions by forging labels and routing products through third countries before sending them to their final destination. Reuters earlier reported that unusually large quantities of antimony, a metal used in batteries, appeared to have been transshipped into the United States via Thailand and Mexico. Rare earths have been a point of focus in trade tensions between China and the US. China produces 70% of the world's rare earths and controls nearly 90% of global processing capacity. In late June, as part of a tentative trade agreement, Beijing agreed to resume shipments as Washington rolled back other restrictions. Now, Japan and the European Union are looking at partnerships to secure their supply of rare earths and reduce their dependency on China. And that's according to the Nikkei newspaper. It is part of a new economic 2+2 framework that Tokyo and Brussels are launching next week. Officials will discuss how Japanese companies can take part in EU projects, with specific opportunities for cooperation to be identified in the months ahead. And many countries are moving to bolster their own supply chains. The U.S. government signed a multi-billion-dollar deal with American minerals company MP Materials earlier this month to boost its own output. India as well is holding talks with Chile and Peru for their critical minerals. Coming up on East Asia tonight, Japanese markets end in the red as investors digest inflation data and upcoming upper house elections. A different picture for Chinese markets as Beijing's campaign against cutthroat price competition lifted investor sentiment. We have details when we come back.
The trade, it helps to be part of the network.
Well, not just any network. UOB's network.
The most extensive network in ASEAN.
Through this network, you can connect directly to my business.
And mine.
And mine.
And mine!
With this network, you can source for supplies big
and small across supply chains.
And connect to sector specialists through 500 UOB offices globally.
With access to an end-to-end platform that syncs up your entire value chain.
For a complete view of your trade and cash position across borders on one single interface.
And that's what makes UOB the one bank for ASEAN.
It's where the region's most extensive trade network meets a truly integrated supply chain platform. And there's just one more thing to say. Be part of ASEAN's most extensive trade network.
Anya, Hajun, go out.
When I am having customer, can you go in? No. He knows that I'm busy inside, so he'll just watch all the things that I tell him not to watch.
This salon is in Orchard, but home salon also can be premium salon like that.
A new series, Hustle in My HDB, Saturday on CNA.
Kenneth is focusing on uncharismatic or unloved animals.
I'm feeling very excited because this is what I've been wanting to see for many years and I have no idea how to look for it. Let's go. Over there. Okay, watch. Every moment in the national park is very precious for me.
In Singapore, something happens every minute, each event vying for your attention.
we're always there to cover the news. But what if we also give you more? What if we told you we go deep into the data, find stories you care about, and explain issues clearly, from housing to healthcare, security to sustainability? We give you the bigger picture on Singapore Tonight.
3, 2, 1.
Hello and good evening. I'm Shahida Othman. Tonight's top stories.
Hello, everyone, as we welcome Henry Yin into the studio for business news. And Henry, not just the tariffs, but the upper house elections as well. How are markets taking it all in?
Yes, indeed, Jill, a lot of things for investors to digest today. And Japanese markets there ending the day in the red as political uncertainty grips investors ahead of Sunday's election. And core inflation cooled in June, coming down from an almost 30-month high as rice prices eased slightly. The core figure, which strips out costs for fresh food, was in line with the 3.3% expected by economists. Well, checking the numbers, Nikkei 225 ending the day down by 0.2%, topics off by similar margin as well. Checking the yen as well, changing hands at 148.69 against the US dollar ahead of a closely watched election this weekend. And shares of Seven & I falling further a day after Canada's Alimentation Couche-Tard pulled its $47 billion bid to buy the Japanese convenience store giant. Seven & I shares down by 3.7%. And for more on how investors are viewing the political outlook in Japan, we're joined from Tokyo by Monex Group's expert director, Jesper Koll. Jesper, Japanese markets and the yen have come under renewed pressure ahead of this weekend's upper house election. So how might the election outcome reshape investor sentiment and influence the broader trajectory of Japanese assets?
Japan used to be this bastion of stability where politics was stable and policymaking very predictable. And as it's very likely that the ruling LDP Komeito coalition will lose control of parliament, as a result of that, there is a big concern in the market that more populist calls for tax cuts, for fiscal irresponsibility are going to start to come through. And of course, as a result of that, the big force in the Japanese market is the fact that interest rates are increasing and the yen is falling, which is, quite a worrying sign.
Well, Jesper, as you've mentioned, that we are seeing greater ambiguity around the BOJ's policy path if the coalition loses grip on power. So what's your prediction on the impact, in the financial markets over there?
Look, I think that, the big issue is that policymaking in Japan will become more uncertain. And of course, given that, together with the uncertainty over the tariff negotiation with the United States, is a negative. The positive side remains that the corporate metabolism is really very, very strong. You see records amount of business investment here in Japan, records amount of mergers and acquisitions. You see corporate leaders really focusing on creating a better future for their company, which is, of course, what equity investors will want to see. But the jitters of interest rates increasing, of fiscal policy becoming more irresponsible, that's sort of the negative push me, pull me. So I actually think that the Japanese market is going to stay range bound for the foreseeable future.
Well, Jesper, since you've mentioned that Japan's corporate governance reform have been a key pillar of economic revitalization in recent years. So to what extent could the election result stall or possibly accelerate those reform efforts?
I think that the election results will have de facto no impact on corporate governance changes, because you remember that it's not the LDP, it is not the politicians who have led the charge on corporate governance changes, but it is the Tokyo Stock Exchange. that really has been the biggest and most important factors, holding companies accountable, to have a proper capital structure. And now, the new move is to actually hold companies accountable. Why are they not investing in their business, in addition to raising dividends and getting rid of those lazy balance sheets? So it's not politics that improves corporate governance, but it's the Tokyo Stock Exchange.
Mm-hmm. Well, Jesper, given all the headwinds you've outlined, how should investors across Asia be positioning themselves? Is it time to sideline Japan's $6.8 trillion stock market, or are there still compelling opportunities to be found over there?
They're very, very compelling opportunities that actually bypass, all of the concerns that you have. And most importantly, you've got the Japanese banking system, because as interest rates go up, as the Japanese yield curve increases, and as you've got record amount of corporate metabolism, it is the Japanese banks that are benefiting from that. There's some very good ETFs focusing on Japanese banks and Japanese financials. That's the safe way to play Japan, while the international order and the manufacturing sector is going to be under increasing pressure. So for Japan, look at the financials.
All right, Jesper, thank you so much indeed for your analysis. Jesper Koll, Expert Director with Monex Group. Markets in the Greater China region closed higher. Checking the numbers at the moment, we are seeing Shanghai Composite Index and Shenzhen Pudong Index both closed higher, staying in positive territory. And tech and mining shares prop up sentiment. In Hong Kong, the benchmark Hang Seng Index up by more than 1.3%, hitting the highest level since February 2022. And China's leaders have pledged to step up regulation of aggressive price cutting by home companies as the world's second biggest economy struggles to shake off persistent deflationary pressures. But the Commerce Ministry in Beijing has been giving the market some warning that the country's economy is facing a severe and complex situation. The comments suggest the government could take action to counter challenges in the second half of the year. And Wang Wentao told journalists that global changes remain unstable and uncertain, before adding that policies will provide new responses in accordance with the times. The knock-on effects of trade turmoil abroad are threatening Beijing's exports at a time when China has been relying more on them to stimulate the economy. Well, despite sluggish performance of domestic consumption, Wang said long-term fundamentals had not changed. China's aluminium imports jumped more than 24% on year in June, and world's top consumer of the light metal imported 300,000 metric tons of aluminium. The data includes primary metal and unwrought alloyed aluminium. And in the first half of 2025, China imported a total of nearly 2 million tons of aluminium and products. The figure was down 3% from the first half of 2024. Imports of the products from January to June totaled 103 million tons, up 33% on year. China is reportedly threatening to block the sale of more than 40 ports owned by Hong Kong-based CK Hutchison to BlackRock and Mediterranean Shipping Company if its largest shipping company, COSCO, does not get a stake. The Wall Street Journal says Beijing is pushing for state-owned COSCO to be an equal partner and shareholder of the ports with BlackRock and Mediterranean Shipping. Well, the business includes 43 ports across 23 countries and has an enterprise value of around $23 billion. BlackRock, MSC, as well as Hutchison, all are said to be open to COSCO taking a stake. But all parties are unlikely to reach a deal before the previously agreed July the 27th deadline for exclusive talks. Experts say any deal giving a stake in the Panama ports to a Chinese-owned company would likely upset President Trump, who has threatened to take control of the canal and has objected to Hutchison's ownership of 2 ports over there. We're seeing gains in Taiwan as well, following semiconductor firm TSMC's bullish outlook. The benchmark TAIEX ending today's trading session up by about 1.2%, while TSMC popping up by more than 2.2%. After it posted a near 61% on-year rise in second quarter profit, which hit a record high as demand for AI chips remained strong. While checking other chip-related stocks in the region as well, we are seeing that Samsung Electronics shares popping up by 0.6%, while SK Hynix under pressure, continuing yesterday's losses after it plunged nearly 9% following Goldman Sachs' downgrade of its investment opinion. And Advantest shares off by more than 4.4%. Investors still spooked by ASML's revenue warning. Meanwhile, cryptocurrency prices continue to soar after the US celebrated its first major national legislation on the virtual currencies. And top cryptocurrencies rose amid optimism on the new policy. And Bitcoin up only marginally at the moment, and Ethereum at the moment up by more than 4.5%, and XRP up about 6% at the moment. And this comes as the US lawmakers passed a bill which sets a regulatory framework for stablecoins. Dubbed the Genius Act, the bill was sent to President Donald Trump and is expected to be signed into law today. This marks a major milestone for the digital asset industry, which has lobbied Congress over regulation for years. When passed, the bill would require tokens to be backed by 1-for-1 with the US dollar or other low-risk assets. Despite notable support, the bill has faced criticism, as some fear it could lead to new risks in the financial system. And that's all for business. Jill, back to you.
Thank you so much, Henry, for that. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Coming up on East Asia tonight, South Korea mobilizing all available resources to battle a third day of torrential rain. At least 4 people have been killed and thousands forced to evacuate.
The weather brought to you by Trafalgar. Unlock the best of Europe and beyond. Visit Trafalgar.com.
It was a totally fenced-up complex. Only people living inside had access. Most of us in LB thought we were different from the rest of the island. The old guys then, if they ever left the naval base to go outside, they say, I'm going to Singapore. As if Singapore was another country.
Biodiversity is booming, which is inviting for some local foragers and farmers who embrace edible wildlife.
We're the largest organic banana grower in Singapore.
This is a jam.
Amazing. So the mulberries are from the garden. No, that's delicious.
Singapore is ramping up conservation efforts locally and across the region.
I really do love reptiles and finding out about them, so I really love my job.
The building must relate to the lives of the people.
目前还是一直要创新，
一些新的东西。我也不希望是人家把我看作是80岁的人。
There are those who dare to be different, who have made their mark in Singapore and beyond.
You have such big dreams, you want to change the world with your art.
Obviously, every fighter wants to win, so all you can do is to prepare yourself to win.
This is East Asia Tonight, and here are the headlines we're following. China says foreign spy agencies are stealing its rare earths and vows to crack down on what it calls infiltration attacking its critical mineral sector. Japan's core inflation cools in June to 3.3%, coming down from a near 30-month high. The figure excludes costs for fresh foods and is in line with expectations. And economic ties in focus at a high-stakes meeting between Japanese leader Shigeru Ishiba and US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent as Japan pushes for trade talks to continue. Well, on that topic and earlier, we spoke to William Pesek, columnist and author of Japanization. He discussed Trump's Asia strategy as the US tariff deadline nears.
There's an election happening on Sunday, and Prime Minister Ishiba could be gone by Monday. His approval ratings are in the high 20s, the low 30s. His party is expected to eke out something of a victory on Sunday, but basically not winning a full majority. And so Prime Minister Ishiba could be shown the door within a few days, and then President Trump has to learn the name of a new Mr. Japan and needs to sit down with a brand new trade deal and really start from scratch, because the next government might have very different ideas than the current government. And I see a lot of what's happening as Trump thinking that the global economy is a big reality TV show, and the next episode is tariffs, the cliffhanger, tariffs. And I think, we're looking at August 1st, and we're thinking about the extent to which countries can basically race some kind of deal into existence to avoid bigger tariffs from the US. But the bigger question for me, it's what's the point of all this? I mean, Trump will get some victories. Maybe he'll be able to do some ribbon cutting. He'll do some press conferences. He'll sign some documents. But will this rearrange the global trading system? Will this change the relationship in any way between the U.S. and Asia? I'm skeptical of that. And really, again, the big question is China, right? Japan, India, Indonesia, these are important economies, but it's all about China. And it's all about Trump getting China to the altar. And the question is, how is he doing on that? And the answer is not very well.
Okay, we'll get to China in a bit, but, I want to ask you about Japan. I was going to ask you what's making it especially difficult for Japan, but I realized that I should reframe that, given what you've said about the art of the deal and how it's not working in Asia at this particular time on tariffs. Can you give us a sense of what's the thinking that the Japanese and also the South Koreans have as they engage in negotiations and, try to basically do away with any tariffs on their key exports, particularly, I guess, autos?
Right. Well, I think the Japanese are just frustrated. 6 years ago, the Japanese went through this process earlier, right? 6 years ago, Japan signed a free trade agreement with the U.S. Now here we are 6 years later. Trump wants another free trade agreement with Japan, and Japan is rolling his eyes saying, what are we doing here? I think one of the concerns that Japan has certainly also is that Trump misunderstands the relationship between Japan and the U.S. I've lived here more than 20 years, and I can tell you the reason why Japanese don't buy U.S. cars is because Japanese roads are tiny, U.S. cars are huge. That is the problem. That is why Japanese don't buy Fords and GMs. It has nothing to do with tariff rates, has nothing to do with non-tariff barriers. Also, Japanese believe that their cars have better quality than U.S. cars. And so Trump is acting as if he's going to change this relationship. He's going to force Japan to import millions of U.S. cars when no one's going to buy them. And that's why you see Trump focusing, and his team wisely, I think, focusing on certain areas where there could be agreement, like rice, for example. Japan's having a rice price crisis at the moment. The U.S. could certainly import more rice to Japan to help U.S. producers, but also to allay or alleviate China's pricing crisis for rice. That's an area of agreement. But I think in many ways, Japan is like, look, we did this 6 years ago. Why are we doing this again? And we might have a new prime minister in a couple of weeks. So why don't we do this in 2026? Why are we rushing to do this right now? So I think Japan is a bit frustrated. And I think the U.S. is surprised that Japan has not been more compliant, right? I think Japan thought the U.S. would be so easy. Wow, Japan will be so desperate for a deal. We'll have that big win in the, basically in the victory column early. Japan's been a lot more difficult than the U.S. expected, and I think Trump is frustrated as well.
Taiwan's Vice President Hsiao Kim says the island does not seek conflict with China and will not provoke a confrontation. She told the Taiwan Foreign Correspondents' Club that Beijing's military posturing was aggressive, counterproductive to relations, and deprives people on both sides of opportunities for growth and prosperity. She stressed the island's defending of the status quo with China is Taipei's choice because it is responsible and consistent with the interests of the region. Ms. Hsiao's comments come as the island wraps up its largest ever annual drills in preparation for a possible Chinese invasion. Now, China has ramped up military pressure against Taiwan in recent years. Beijing views the island as part of its territory and has said it will never commit to renouncing the use of force. China's Education Ministry has issued a safety warning for Chinese students studying in the Philippines. The ministry said the Philippines has experienced unrest recently and crimes have targeted Chinese citizens. It asked students to step up precautions if they choose to study in the Philippines. This is the second warning of its kind from Beijing this year. The first one in April warned students about the risk of studying in certain US states. Relations between China and the Philippines have been tense over their South China Sea territorial disputes. Just this week, Manila accused a Chinese ship of damaging coral near Titu Island in the disputed waters. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung has called for the mobilization of all available resources from every ministry and agency as the country battles its third day of torrential rains. At least 4 people have been killed and more than 5,000 forced to evacuate. The fatalities include a person whose car was buried after a wall of an overpass collapsed. Other victims were found dead in flooded areas, though officials are still investigating whether to classify them as deaths from the rain. Emergency services were out in force to rescue South Korean residents from flooded areas. Authorities have raised landslide alerts to the highest level as torrential rains continue into a third day. Hundreds of schools were shut, with over 160 reports of property damage caused by the severe weather. At least 46 flights were also cancelled. A tropical storm Whipper is intensifying as it draws near to the northern tip of Luzon in the Philippines. The storm is forecast to cross into the South China Sea later today. It is expected to bring rain to Taiwan over the weekend. Forecasters say the tropical storm is set to strengthen as it churns westwards and could be typhoon strength as it nears southern China. Hong Kong, which is in its path, could raise its T1 storm warning signal as early as tonight. Whipper is also expected to drench northern Vietnam in the coming week. Parts of Japan are facing scorching heat as weather authorities issue heat stroke alerts for some prefectures. A daytime high of 37 degrees Celsius is expected in Toyama City in central Japan, as well as in Yamagata City in the northeast. The capital, Tokyo, is forecast to face temperatures of up to 33 degrees Celsius. Authorities have urged residents to stay cool indoors and consume fluids and salt. Those working outdoors have also been advised to take regular breaks. Meanwhile, Japan's Met Agency says the rainy season is likely over for the region, ending earlier than usual for most of the country. And we have lots more climate-related coverage all across CNA platforms. Do catch our podcast, Climate Conversations, on our website, mobile app, and on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. Still to come on East Asia tonight, researchers in Hong Kong find a way to use AI to reconstruct bone structures in 3D using just a few X-rays. The technology could dramatically cut patients' radiation exposure.
China's Greater Bay Area pushes the free flow of talent and travel.
If you migrate to other countries, I think it's not as convenient as this one.
But can it revive one of its struggling economic zones?
They are improving, maybe not as fast as the people would expect it.
From Guangdong to Hong Kong and Macau, examining the impact of China's mega region drive. Wednesday on CNA.
East Asia, a region steeped in history, now helping to write the future of our world. From the corridors of power to the region's most remote corners, we'll break down the news driving some of the world's largest economies and explain why it matters.
On East Asia tonight, with me, Oteli Edwards.
By 2050, global electricity demand is expected to surge by 75%, and fossil fuels are exacting a heavy toll.
We have a climate crisis. We're doing what we can to avert the damage associated with that.
Now there's new talk of a new renaissance. Nuclear's low carbon, and it's also able to produce energy 24/7.
Nuclear power is making a global comeback. 70 plants are under construction worldwide. Now, the priority is on safety and security.
Nuclear security is about ensuring public trust, it's ensuring public acceptance of nuclear energy.
Is everyone prepared to live with nuclear power?
I believe the future of energy is nuclear. We cannot live without nuclear.
Watch The Nuclear Option on demand at CNA.Asia.
MediaCorp has been honored as Broadcaster of the Year at the 2025 World Media Festival. From Singapore to the world, our gripping documentaries and unforgettable entertainment continue to inspire, captivate, and connect audiences across the globe. This award celebrates the passion and talent behind every story we tell. Watch the award-winning programs on demand for free on MeWatch.
Welcome back. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim says his government will give due consideration to the proposed appointment of Nick Adams as the country's next US ambassador. This comes after protests by the youth wing of Mr. Anwar's People's Justice Party. They sent a memorandum to the US Embassy in Kuala Lumpur, voicing strong objections to the nomination. Mr. Adams has been described as a self-styled alpha male influencer. He has faced criticism in Malaysia for his views on Islam and his support for Israel's war in Gaza. The controversy comes as Putrajaya works out a trade deal with Washington ahead of Trump's sweeping tariff deadline. CNA's Melissa Goh explains what protesters hope to achieve.
Their message is very clear. They don't want this 40-year-old right-wing influencer to be the next U.S. ambassador to Malaysia. Nick Adams' name has sent alarm bells ringing since last week after he posted a video of himself to say that he can't wait to be here in Malaysia to take President Trump's goodwill and spread it to the great people of Malaysia, he said. Now, it's worrisome to many protesters I spoke with earlier because he's such a controversial and divisive figure. from his Islamophobic and misogynistic antics to his pro-Zionist remarks. They said now he's bound to anger the people here, they said, and ruin the bilateral relations with the US and deepen public distrust towards America under President Trump. Now, because an ambassador, they said, represents a country, it's a reflection of his administration.
As a woman, myself, we're rejecting Nick Adams because he's known as sexist, misogynist, and of course, he's also pro-Zionist. So we are protesting against that. I think for Malaysia, we need someone that is very aligned with what we have in Malaysia. We are a multiracial country, so we need someone that really align with that.
I urge the government, the Anwar Ibrahim governments, to reject it totally, because according to the law, international law, which is Vienna Convention, it stated that the receiving state has the right to reject it.
As the protester pointed out, it's going to be in the memorandum as well, which is under the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations, in particular Article 4, which stipulates that a receiving state or country may refuse any diplomatic envoy without having to justify. But coming out here, voicing out their concerns, handing over a memorandum to the US Embassy or in an attempt to do so, they hoped that those involved in the process will heed their call and stop Nick Adams from being sent here as their next US ambassador.
Turning to some other news, the EU has signed off on one of its strongest sanctions packages against Russia to date. The package, which includes lowering a price cap on Moscow's oil exports, comes after Slovakia dropped a weeks-long block over separate plans to phase out Russian gas imports by the end of 2027. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas says the bloc's 18th package of such measures are aimed at weakening Russia's ability to wage war. EU officials say the bloc has agreed to cut its price cap on Russian oil exported to third countries to 15% below market value. Under the scheme, the new level for crude oil from Moscow will start at $47.6 per barrel. That threshold is based off a G7 initiative aimed at limiting the amount of money Russia makes by exporting oil to partners such as China and India. EU allies, however, failed to earn the support of US President Donald Trump for the new sanction package. The bloc is also blacklisting over 100 more vessels in the so-called shadow fleet of aging tankers used by Russia to circumvent oil export curbs. They will also implement measures to stop the defunct Baltic Sea gas pipelines Nord Stream 1 and 2 from being brought back online. Staying in Ukraine, Japanese experts have conducted training in Kyiv, showing trainees how to detect and clear landmines using equipment provided by Tokyo. Participants using a mine detector equipped with a ground-penetrating radar were shown how to identify mines buried underground. About 50 detectors were given.
ウクライナだともう敷設されたばかりで、もう地面の近くにあったりするようなものというところが非常に大量にあったりするわけですよね。なのでカンボジアでやってきたやり方だけでなくて、この装置を使ってウクライナにどう適用させるかというところが私たち今大きな課題なんです。
Some 30% of land all across Ukraine are believed to be littered with landmines and unexploded shells in the aftermath of Russia's invasion. But it's not just those recently laid mines that are of concern for authorities.
І досі знаходимо на території України залишки вибухонебезпечних предметів часів Другої, а інколи і Першої світової війни. Тому треба розуміти, що це може зайняти досить великий проміжок часу.
Hong Kong researchers have found a way to reconstruct the human bone structure in 3 dimensions by using 2D X-ray images. Scientists at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology say bone replacement procedures used to be very challenging, but with artificial intelligence, they are now able to do this with clinical precision and relative ease.
通过对比从传统 CT 里面提取的这个手工勾画提取的3维骨骼模型来讲，我们仅依赖2维的一个X-ray 的一个影像，我们的重建的这个精度误差是小于1毫米，重建速度是从原来的6个小时提升到平均30秒。
Clinical trials will begin in Hong Kong's public hospitals by year end. The technology is also expected to reduce the need for CT scans, which expose patients to high levels of radiation.
如果個技術可以避免用一個 CT 咁大嘅 radiation exposure 而達至到差唔多嘅效果嘅話呢，其實呢一個技術就可以減低病人嘅 exposure 啦亦都如果喺公立醫院嘅話呢，減少時間要去排期做一個電腦掃描，咁所以對於病人嚟講亦都係好大嘅造福嚟嘅。
Well, we're staying in Hong Kong, and the Hong Kong Polytechnic University has received new project funding this year to revitalise the city's traditional art and promote digital transformation of its culture industry. It is the first tertiary institution in the city to receive the China National Arts Fund. CNA's Mei Wong takes a look at a few of the university's projects.
From exquisite crafts that took decades to master to a quick touch of a screen potentially accessible to anyone in the future. That's how PhD students at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University have managed to capture a porcelain paint master's skills and techniques using generative AI.
One of the masters was thinking whether there was new technology actually can quickly trigger the kids' attention and the interest, and second is that how to reduce the tedious the porcelain making process into simple interesting steps. We are trying to use the technology to recreate a three-dimensional space to vividly replicate the making process. So instead of the traditional way using the 2D video, the new technology allow apprentices or younger people to observe the process from different angles.
With fewer master artisans and many not taking on apprentices, technology is probably the last resort to capture and pass on the know-hows.
Oral presentation, and some of the master actually they may not be able to describe the process precisely, right? Or using the terminology younger generation can understand. So using the digital technology or virtual reality to visualize the process, right? Then that will be easier for the students.
Now, with technology, learning a traditional craft is no longer confined to the old craftsman's physical availability. In fact, technology is not only used for preserving traditional crafts.
你是谁？
我是一个疍家青年，以船为家，生活在水上。
The students have used AI to generate a digital human from the fast disappearing indigenous Tanka group or ethnic community known as boat dwellers to share their history and experiences.
A lot of culture, a lot of other pieces are disappeared. So for me, first of all, I think that technology can help to digitalize these things. I think young people will be interested in it because it is interactive.
While such a PhD project is still undergoing refinements, local museums are doing their part to keep the level of crafts and cultural interest alive. How to make a traditional cheongsam? What goes into the building of a bamboo theatre? And how to make a lion's head commonly seen during the festivals such as Chinese New Year by hand. Now, this museum features more than 40 different traditions, cultures, and crafts synonymous with Hong Kong. All this with the aim to spread the knowledge and information about the techniques of such crafts and also to keep these practices alive. But if you're unable to visit the museum in person, virtual reality can soon help with that. Using VR, this university PhD project allows users to tour the museum virtually and be immersed in the exhibitions. The aim is to officially launch this project in locations like libraries or schools by the end of next year. The use of technology will not only help to ignite the interest among the young, but also to bring the traditional crafts and culture closer to the people. Mei Wong, CNA, Hong Kong.
I also want to tell you about a new K-pop boy band with 2 North Korean members that have made their global debut.
하나, 둘, 셋. 안녕하세요. 뮤니버스입니다.
The band is stylized as one verse, but pronounced universe. Its 5 members, all in their 20s, are from North Korea, Japan, and the United States. Their new album includes a song about defecting from one of the world's toughest regimes. One member told reporters he did this as a child, fleeing to China first, then crossing other international borders with the help of a broker. In North Korea, he started working when he was 9 and was sometimes forced into desperate measures to get food.
도둑질하다가 이제 맞아봤어요. 들켜서 잡혀서 막 엄청 크게 맞아서 막 피 나고 막 이랬었던 경험도 있고, 진짜 너무 많은 경험들을 해서 신밥이라고 하면 혹시
오래된 밥.
네, 맞아요. 그 냄새 나는 밥 있잖아요. 그거도 이제 먹어봤고, 그건 진짜 약간이고.
처음 봤어요. 그런 강남스타일 그 영상은 제가 가지고 있었던 건 아니고 친한 동생한테 갔다가 동생이 보여줘가지고 봤었는데 이런 뮤비 자체가 노래도 그렇고 좀 보고 깜짝 놀랐었어요. 그냥.
Now, Universe is not the first K-pop band to have North Korean defectors as members. Major K-pop labels are now turning to talent outside Korea, going global in a bid to appeal to a wider audience.
Who doesn't love the story of someone from a humble background chasing their dreams? And especially K-pop, it's very flashy. So I thought people would be interested to hear their stories.
To me, isn't it fun? Like, our group is just a unique type of global.
Well, ahead on Asia Tonight, here are some of the stories we're also covering. US President Donald Trump has asked for the release of grand jury transcripts related to the now-deceased financier and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Anger is mounting among Mr. Trump's political base over the handling of the case. Torrential monsoon rains pound Pakistan, killing at least 60 people in eastern Pakistan in the last 24 hours. Most of the fatalities were caused by roof failures in poorly built homes. Aid agencies are sounding the alarm for children, the most vulnerable in such disasters. And Malaysia's economy grows faster than expected in the second quarter. And these stories and lots more on Asia Tonight, 8 p.m. Singapore, Hong Kong time on CNA. Well, you've been watching East Asia Tonight. Thank you for your company. And don't forget headlines anytime, CNA.Asia, Facebook, and also YouTube. Bye-bye.
The weather brought to you by Trafalgar.